Live united.
Live united.
Live united.
Live united.
Live united.
Live united.
Vivimos juntos.
We live united.
We live united. I live united.
Live united.
Hello, and welcome to Live United. I'm Milton Little. Atlanta is one of the nation's largest hubs for human trafficking, and I know there's debate about how precise the numbers are, but I suspect we can all agree on this, is that one person exploited is one person too many. In July, United Way gathered experts to discuss ways we can join together to stop human trafficking and restore dignity to survivors. One of the most powerful speakers was Dr. Brooke Bello, founder and CEO of More to Life, and she's also a sex trafficking survivor. Watch as she shares her story.
I never met a girl, I never met a little boy who didn't want their innocence back. I remember specifically being beneath a 350-pound fat man, and the room was full of men. This was after I had been trafficked for a while, injected with drugs. I was a straight-A student. I was a little leader in my little school. I was an athlete, and my mother was a victim of domestic violence, one of the root causes of the issue. And so me and my brother were secondary victims. It was easy for me to be manipulated after I was brutally raped by a friend of my grandfather's at 11. My whole world changed after that, and it was very difficult to hold on to what I thought life was. But innocence, a misconception for survivors and for the general public is that we can't get innocence back because children, women, men want innocence back. And you may not ever understand that unless you've been in a room and traded, sodomized, and beaten and raped over and over again. You might not know that we as survivors have actually literally lived in hell. And the stuff that we've seen I can't really repeat because it's that dark. But it is an extraordinary thing that I'm here before you in my right mind, considering I've been in gutters with my teeth knocked out in a drunken stupor. I will say one thing about God today, because United Way was founded by like a priest and a rabbi, and that I just want to thank God for being alive. So the state equality or fact of being innocent of a crime or offense, innocence, guiltlessness, blamelessness, free from corruption, purity. At the crux and core, survivors can get that back when you begin to understand that you are blameless, that you are guiltless, and thus free from the corruption that plagued your soul, your will, your mind, and your emotions through trauma, in addition to the root causes of human trafficking, which over 80% of girls that were trafficked or prostituted have come from home. There was domestic violence, fatherlessness, which is orphan in degree, rape, molestation, and all manner of other forms of sexual violence. And I was just telling Alex, I love what he does, and I do some work with Alex, because he really does a lot of profound research, along with Hunter Alternatives, that supports all of these truths. Thank you, Alex. I always wanted a dad. It's no wonder that one of my friends, because I've had more than one call, I had to call Daddy. Daddy this, Daddy that, Master this, Master that. Because there's not a child that doesn't want a father or a woman who doesn't want a good man of honor by her side. I always say men are the biggest part of the issue of human trafficking, and so they will be the biggest part of the solutions. And I'm going to be witness that just because your virginity is stolen and robbed, I'm still innocent, because innocence is just being blameless. And maybe they robbed my husband and I from having children because I was so violated physically. When I married him, I still considered myself a virgin because it was the first time that I made a choice to willingly surrender to a man that I loved. Misconceptions. It is not sex slavery, and you cannot buy sex. Sex comes from the Greek word koinonia. It means to know and be known. It is passion, it is love, it is something between two consenting adults. That is a beautiful thing. This is never that. So we have to teach our communities that you cannot buy sex. You just can't. Language is key. This is a huge misconception. One thing that survivors know, I will say this, victim to survivor, and I've just registered this trademark. More life is victim to survivor, survivor to thriver, thriver to champion. Why is that? Because I have a girlfriend who survived breast cancer. She knows she survived it. She went through chemo, she fought with the doctor, fought to change her diet, fought to go back and forth, fought in the process of losing her hair. And when she got on the other side of it and the cancer went into remission, she was celebrated it. But victims don't know that they don't know that they're victims. Harriet Tubman said, I freed 1,000 slaves and I could have freed 1,000 more if they only knew they were slaves. So when you grow up in lasciviousness and rape and debaucherousness and incest and molestation and fatherlessness, when you're finally manipulated away into a trafficking, forced prostitution situation, at some point you acquiesce and surrender. If you don't, you will be whooped and beat. So here comes the blame game, the guilt. And so survivors need to see authenticity. You want to know why they run away from houses all over this country when really great, meaningful, amazing women get together to help them? Because they don't see truth. Inside of a trafficking situation, as dark and ugly and gross as it is, you know what you're going to get. You know everyone hates you. You know you're being sold. You know what your job is every day. When you get out of that, and when you peer into the window of what life could really be like, and then you have broken promises, you want to run away. Because there's no truth there either, so where do you go? A misconception is that survivors can never heal from all that trauma. They can when they grow from victim to survivor and discover, oh, I am a survivor. Now that I'm a survivor, I can learn to be a thriver. And if I can learn to be a thriver, I can learn to be a champion, because you can have all the mental behavioral health, and we have a lot of it, and it's key. It's key and it's crucial. But if you don't point that to the discovery of someone's identity, because that's what's lost in the process. Here's a misconception. It's not really restoration sometimes, because there's nothing that they're being restored to, because they never knew who they were. They never felt part of society. There's nothing to be integrated back into. It's sometimes just identity discovery and transformation and self-discovery. And that's what we all want, right? Don't we all want to know who we are in life? Victims don't know that. I've been on top of a roof raped by gypsies on one end and made to do blowjobs on the other end. Fell out of that whole situation after some years by a freak miracle. And before I became a filmmaker, I was working at a restaurant in Beverly Hills called the Hamburger Hamlet. And actor John Boyd used to come in here and order pancakes. He became my very first mentor, even though he knows today that I thought he was like a dirty old man, and he's not. He's amazing. But I was afraid of all men. I also, in my work with the LGBT population, I thought for a long time that I was homosexual or gay or lesbian, whatever, and I'm not. Like, I always loved boys. I always wanted to be married. I always wanted like a big, tall husband and 3 kids. But when you come out of that kind of abuse, you don't know who you are. And you have appetites and addictions that you don't understand, but it doesn't mean that should be the crux and focus of your whole life. And so we have to sit back and listen and allow children to discover who they are, in addition to the women with the child inside of them. So food, shelter, rescue, restoration? Question mark. Survivors need more. They need to first understand that you have survived, whether you know it or not. They need to learn how to grow to be thrivers and discover destiny, discover why they were born. Confusion. I work with a lot of youth. We serve a lot of youth in the Tampa Bay region and adults. Those tennis shoes are actually some kicks, as they say, from where I'm from, that kids really like. But that's a confusing act. Don't you think that would be confusing for any youth who love those kicks? That we actually support in our media, in the social impact of media and television and the internet, ads like this as commonplace and okay. And so for survivors, when we come out of all of that violence, we don't see that the world around us is any different, and it's very confusing. So how can healing really take place? Images in hip hop and culture. When Mara had me speak a few weeks ago, I shared a video by Usher, and the songs had to do with the B word, the cut her up, turn her into a slut. But the whole song, he was saying that he loved her. And the beat of the music was so excellent. We actually see mothers driving in their car, listening to the song, and the kids are thinking it's okay. But the words, it does not take a club or a knife or something abusive to hurt a child. It takes beating their brain over and over again. This is abuse. This is a violent abuse against you, because we learn through 85% of everything we learn as individuals is through observation, through what we see perpetually over and over and over and over again. So it's not just about what Alex said, yes, what we purchase. Or Megan or Free wrote Justin Dillon, I love their work. It's about what we allow in media, in commercials, and what we allow our children to see and to absorb. Images like this of famous hip-hoppers. For young men transforming and discovering who they want to be. For survivors, we have girls that are 12, 13, 14, addicted to what they think is sex because of the repeated abuse. And even though 12 years old might be the national average, many of the children we work with, their familial sex slave started at 3 years old, 4 years old, full penetration, 5 years old, and 6 years old. I don't have to say anything about the images. I have about a minute and a half left. Time does fly, doesn't it? This is every day of the kind of imagery we accept. And young girls, even boys, need to discover the beauty of innocence and the preciousness and treasure of who they are as individuals. And that their future, that their very nature is not predicated upon their physicality, but their character, their intelligence. Survivors, just as any survivor human being, needs to belong, and because we have been in hell on earth and appreciate the simplest good, will we ever be clean enough? We want to know, will we ever be clean enough? Will you ever see us clean enough to not be who we were, but who we were born to be, and sit with us? As Maya Angelou says, sing the song in our heart that we've never learned or have forgotten. What survivors want to know. This is why survivor leadership is so powerful. Because our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light and not our darkness that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant? Who am I to be gorgeous, talented, even fabulous? But the question is, will you actually see us that way even before we get there? And finally, Nelson Mandela made this narrative by Marianne Williamson popular because he spent a lot of time in prison, but yet he was free because bondage is in the mind. So it's not just about victims being in bondage, but it's about doing things that allow our whole society to be free and all the things we can do to get there. I wish I had more time, but I'm so thankful that you allowed me to share.
One proven way to reduce human trafficking is to arrest the criminals who are purchasing victims. Dr. Alex Trudeau executive director of YouthSpark, has been studying the demand side of human trafficking for many years. Let's watch as he explains why we must address demand if we're ever going to stop trafficking.
We've got sex trafficking and we've got labor trafficking. But first I want to talk a little bit about how this all fits together. So you know that in trafficking, human trafficking, we've got supply, right? These are victims. And I'm going to put these in some pretty dry economic terms. Okay, so don't confuse that with a lack of empathy. But this is an economic issue, right? So you've got supply. We've also got the term market facilitators. This is something economists like to use, it's something advocates don't, but I'm going to dive into the economic side of things right now. Market facilitators are pimps, or they're people who try to arrange exploitative labor situations, right? These are the people who presumably make the most profit off of our human trafficking market. And you've got demand. So all of this together creates trafficking, which trafficking really just means illegal economic activity. So if we understand this as an economic model, we can start to parse out a little bit better how we put an end to it, right? Okay, so let's talk about who are the demanders. That's my job. Who are these folks? Let's start with labor trafficking. It's actually a little bit easier because the demanders are me, you. If you've eaten half as many chocolate bars in your lifetime as I have, you have participated in labor trafficking as a demander. Because you can see the image up there is of a young child harvesting cocoa beans in Western Africa. And we know that labor trafficking has been a persistent problem in supply chains for a number of companies, but cocoa harvesting, for some reason, has been an area where there's been a lot of documented labor trafficking victimization. Chocolate companies tried to clean up their act. They still try to clean up their act. It's hard work, but businesses and their supply chains represent a key opportunity to improve labor trafficking. But we are the demanders. We're the ones who want chocolate bars. So maybe sharp a little bit harder for chocolate bars next time. Pay an extra 50 cents for that chocolate bar so that you can feel like you're at least not exploiting a child. But we also have problems. I grabbed this little screen grab from a t-shirt company online. Why should we be able to buy a t-shirt for $1.73? Right? You really think that people are paid fairly? Someone has to sew that. There's not a magic sewing machine that does it all by itself. Someone has to do that, right? So we've got major problems with labor trafficking, which really, in many cases, represents our desire to have really, really, really low-cost goods, and most importantly, to not have transparency and accountability in our company's supply chains. But the great thing about being a demander for labor trafficking, if there is a great thing, is that we can also be a demander for the reduction of labor trafficking. And that's what we demand simply is more transparency and more accountability in our supply chains from our companies. Many companies are really trying to work hard on this, and I can tell you from having been on this side of it myself, it is very hard to ensure you've got a totally clean supply chain. But demanders, that's us, we can solve that. So that's, I'm going to just say, is the easy side of understanding demand. Now let's go to sex trafficking. Okay, this is as creepy as I'm going to get today. I'm not going to just put a bunch of, yeah, these guys are all traffickers. These are just recent ones too, actually. The guy in the far right, the top right, was just arrested by Brookhaven police. He's been preying on adolescent boys in Metro Atlanta for years now. Actually, he finally got caught. The gentleman at the top is an Emory professor who got caught for child pornography. The gentleman at the bottom was an elementary school principal. And then you've got all sorts of casting characters here. The point is, you could meet any of these guys when you're out doing your errands and they wouldn't look like a trafficker. They wouldn't look like a buyer of children. You wouldn't be able to tell that by how they walk, how they talk. These are guys all around us. Are they pedophiles? Some of them, yes. But usually no. So we have a number of cases where men attempting to purchase sex with adolescents, once the cops go raid their house, raid their computers, they find child pornography in their possession. But most, that's not the case. But some are pedophiles. So there is some overlap with the issue of pedophilia. Do they recruit young people? So there's this question that if there were no market facilitators, would demand still connect with supply? You better believe it would. Some demanders are, and that's the economic term, demanders. Some demanders are very aggressive. They are doing as much recruitment as they are buying. Not all are. So it varies, truth be told. Do they know they're buying a child? We often assume, well, of course these guys know they're buying a kid. Sometimes yes, but usually they don't. Or at least usually they're not willing to sit down and have an honest conversation and check 2 forms of identification and run a full background check on the person they're about to buy. It just doesn't work that way. Right? So to help you understand how that works, what we did is we went and recorded all of the reported ages of our quote-unquote supply on Backpage in one given day. So you guys know Backpage is the largest online marketplace for paid sex in America. And they're under intense scrutiny, they have been for years. But this is Atlanta's Backpage listings of people available for sex for sale. This is the reported ages, and I totally did not know this is going to be the screen size, so I apologize that you can't read the numbers here. But the lowest you can advertise your age on Backpage is 18, and then there's no upper bound limit. So on the far left of the distribution are those who say they're 18, and on the far right, 45 and above. And you can't see it too well, but I'll highlight it right here. Half of the distribution are people who say they're between the ages of 18 and 23. That means demand in Atlanta is wanting half of supply to be no older than age 23. And why that matters is that when we do victim recovery, we know that the girls who are, and the boys, who are exploited online typically report their ages as 20, 21, 22, right in that neighborhood. They don't say 18 or 19 because then they're afraid the cops are going to click on their ad. And they can get away with it. They can look like they're 21, 22 online, and we somehow are willing to just say that's okay. So 50% of our supply is targeted towards young people online. Half of it. 50% of our supply, which is pretty astonishing. And we know from a lot of research, including some that we've done here at USpark recently, that 10 to 20% of young people who are in the life are actually under the age of 18. So you take that young end of the distribution, you say 10 to 20% of them are actually juveniles. So it's a real and persistent and immediate threat to kids to allow a percentage of paid sex transactions to occur among young people. Create a little fake ad on Backpage, or you can do it on any site. You put a little link in there and it says, to see more of my photos, click here. Ooh. See more of my photos, click here. Well, people like clicking that link. And when they do, we track their IP address. And don't worry, we're not showing them any more photos. I would not do that. They go to a website that says it's broken, and they're like, oh, shucks, I'll on the next ad. All right, so we track their IP address, and this is where they are in Metro Atlanta. Pretty much the same distribution we found a few years ago. But that's zoomed in, my friends. This is all of them. This was one ad in Atlanta's Backpage site. Atlanta's Backpage. They didn't think they were getting this guy out in Vermont. There's someone in Vermont clicking on this, by the way. They thought this was someone in Atlanta. And this was an ad for a boy. So when people ask me, is this something that really affects boys? Yeah, it really does. It really does. So then I did it again. This time with an ad for a girl. And this is zoomed in on Metro Atlanta. This is a couple days ago, by the way. Yeah. This is zoomed in on Metro Atlanta. This is zoomed out across the US, and you're saying, okay, wow, that's pretty similar. There's a key difference, though. The ad for the boy we left up for a few days. These are the people who clicked on this ad within 90 minutes. 90 minutes of posting the ad, and these are the people who clicked. There's actually one person in Chile who clicked on the ad. They started flying back. So 90 minutes, 181 different people clicked on the link. 27 people called or texted the phone number to arrange a date with this young girl. Okay, that was in 90 minutes. There are over 700 ads a day on Atlanta's Backpage site. This was one ad in 90 minutes. Right? All right, so how many of these guys get caught? Not enough. So what we've done is we've pulled together arrest data from law enforcement jurisdictions. This is 2014. We're still waiting on some to get back to us through FOIA requests. And what you've got here, the blue bar represents arrests for supply. This is not saying juveniles, although there are going to be some juvenile arrests in here. Very few, though. This is just in general to see where is law enforcement focusing on this issue. We've got our supply arrests in blue, we've got our market facilitation arrests in gray, and we've got our demand, our buyer arrests in orange. Now, in the first wave of law enforcement crackdown on this issue, our police, and I think probably rightfully so, said we need to treat market facilitators as the ones who should be locked up. We need to get aggressive. We need to stop arresting these girls, these kids, and we need to start arresting their pimps instead. And we've done a good job of that. We really have. The next wave of law enforcement priorities on this are all about demand. It has to be. It has to be. And there's good reason why. Because when you, and I swear this is the truth, when you arrest a guy for buying sex, great research shows that he is 70% less likely to ever buy again. There are not a whole lot of things that our law enforcement partners do, that judges do, that anyone does to cause a 70% reduction in recidivism. If I told you there's something you can do to cause a 70% reduction in recidivism for any crime, you'd be like, Alex, tell me what it is. Is this easy? All you've got to do is arrest the guy trying to buy sex. And that 70% is a low-end estimate. It's probably 70 to 80%. In other words, arrest is an effective tool. Now imagine what happens if we take that pie that shows the guys who buy weekly or who buy monthly, and we said, we're just going to arrest you. We're just going to make it a priority for arresting you. We're going to take that slice of the pie, which was something like 90% of all transactions, and we're going to focus our arrest efforts on them. Our police officers know how to do this stuff. They're great at what they do. But there's one thing that they don't have enough of. They don't have enough of us telling them that this is a priority. And I wouldn't tell you this is a priority if the numbers didn't back up that it's an effective solution. But it is an effective solution. So at Youth Park, we've been dealing with at-risk youth for years. And we realized after a while that if you don't stop and consider the lack of justice involved in this issue, that no one is holding their perpetrators accountable, then you're going to be doing the same thing over and over and over again. So while we continue to serve at-risk youth and we work with our partners to help those youth who are victimized by exploitation, we realize that we have to dedicate the same resources to holding their perpetrators accountable, because it's actually an effective way to go about remedying the problem.
There are lots of things we can do to stop trafficking in Greater Atlanta. And one of the easiest ways to get involved is to spread the word. Let people know that men, women, girls, and boys are being exploited and trafficked in our community. And it's our responsibility to help them and stop this from happening to others. Thanks for watching Live United. We'll see you next time.